Hi, good afternoon. I'm Veronica Montgomery, and welcome to the third part of our seminar series on crisis management, marketing, and communications. So, let me just share my screen with you and then we can start. Okay. So, first of all, in this presentation, I'm just going to talk about my background, and then we're going to cover in this segment the blogs that I've written on video marketing tips, podcasts, cost effective marketing, and digital marketing. So, my background, I started my career at the Royal College of Nursing as advertising manager across 8 nursing titles. I then skipped across the fence from the publishing side to the advertising agency side, and I was a director at Kingsway Advertising, and we specialised in health marketing for NHS trusts up and down the UK. And then I skipped across the fence again, but this time I went right across the big pond, across to the Caribbean island of Barbados. And then I was the marketing consultant at Barbados Fertility Centre for 15 years. And when I left there in December 2018, I went off to create the Fertility Hub. The reason I wanted to start the Fertility Hub was as a media buyer for 15 years, specifically in the infertility market. I didn't feel that there was a platform that gave regular information to infertility patients and the sort of content that I knew they were interested in reading about. I found a lot of the sites out there were sort of acting as a catalogue of clinics that you could go to, but without the actual updated content. And the same on the healthcare side. I wanted a platform that brought together both the patients and the healthcare providers, but with useful content for the healthcare providers as well. Now, whilst there's lots of scientific sites out there, again, for me working in the marketing aspect or anybody on the admin side, there really wasn't a site that kept us abreast of what was going on in the industry. So the Fertility Hub aims to address both of those by bringing both patients and healthcare providers together under one umbrella. The healthcare side is a click through a main gateway from the main site, and you have to register to access that content because some of it, a lot of research we know can be quite patient driven if they get their hands on it. So we're currently seeing on average of 15,000 visitors a month throughout the pandemic. In May, we actually saw 45,000 visitors. So, you know, people were really out there scouring for treatment. And we've managed to maintain those high figures throughout. So as I said, we've got locked access to the healthcare providers, and at present we have 5,000 registered to access that content. And that launched in May 2019. So this is the third of these seminars. So I've been doing one a month since the outbreak of COVID. So in part one, I covered crisis management itself, the overall marketing and communications, what the financial implications look like for COVID-19. And unfortunately, a lot of that we're now seeing to come into fruition, and the use of PR. The second seminar that we did last month focused on protecting your brand throughout the crisis, use of online marketing, online seminars, and the power of newsletters. So going straight into today's presentation, I'm going to talk about some video marketing tips. Video marketing is a powerful tool in the current climate. Hopefully you're already producing videos for use on your social media channels, but a lot of research is coming out in the marketing world on how usage has changed throughout the lockdown phase globally, and research has shown that 80% of consumers are engaging in video content across all channels. So it's definitely a tool that you need to be using if you're not already. And really, video content is central to all of your other marketing activity. So just by producing one video, then that springs out into all the different ways you can publish that content. The great thing is that IVF patients are very information hungry, and video content really satisfies that hunger. It's something they can watch in the privacy of their own home, things they can watch with the sound down if they're actually back in the office. But again, just make sure you're actually engaging in it. When you set out to make a video, sit down and make some clear objectives of what you want that video content to be, and what is your end result, what is the call to action, and make sure there is an end result. People don't watch it and go, oh, that was nice, but I don't know how to get in contact with them, which I think sometimes we can all be guilty of failing to remember that call to action at the end. At the moment, with everything that clinics have gone through with COVID-19, you can make content that's specific to the current crisis, which is something that patients are worried about. So you can be explaining the new guidelines of how your clinic's been allowed to reopen, whether that be the ASRM guidelines, the ESHRA guidelines, or the HFEA for the UK. So by explaining those, you obviously can demonstrate then, there'll be social distancing, and obviously all the staff will be wearing full PPE. Also, something patients are worried about is what we know so far about COVID and pregnancy. Thankfully, to date, research has shown that there hasn't been adverse effects. However, obviously, we're all keeping a very close eye on that. So again, explain the videos for patients, telling them what we know so far, and that, why clinics have allowed to be reopened, and we do believe it's safe to continue treatment, even though we still have with the pandemic around. So explaining to them what treatment will look like in your clinic, how much of that is going to move over to telehealth, how much will be done in person, and how the in-person, obviously, in vitro and egg retrieval is going to be an invasive procedure, so it will be up close and personal. So what measures you're taking to ensure both the safety of your patients and your staff. Also, operational changes, as I've said, what's moving to telehealth, what's it going to look like when they come for treatment? Have your opening hours differed? Less patients in the clinic? All of those things can be explained in your videos. And again, because IVF is such a content-rich subject, there's many videos you can produce on all the different disease groups, whether that be PCOS, endometriosis, the IVI, IUI, and IVF, what that process actually means, and also COVID testing as well, and what's your policy in your clinic of, do patients have to undergo a COVID test, or are you happy just carrying out a questionnaire? Make your content original. You're probably sick of the sight of me. I know I am sick of the sight of looking at myself on camera, and also, this whole pandemic has forced us to rethink how we're doing business. Some of it, I think, for the better, but you do actually get Zoom fatigue, and looking at the camera can become quite exhausting. But again, when you're back in clinic and you're working with other people, it doesn't all have to be just focused on one person. You can actually move around the clinic with the camera. Don't copy competitor messaging. Try and be original. What you're trying to do with this video is really show your brand's personality, and what you want to convey is that the patient is unique, and so is your treatment of them. So do try and make it very personal. Even now, as we're coming out of lockdown, people are still working from home. A lot of this probably changed the way we're going to work for years to come. I doubt we'll ever go back to how we worked before, especially in an office environment. So, it's still fine to do talking heads. It's fine to give people a glimpse into your own personal life. People are very unsure and very anxious about not only their financial future, but recent research has showed the mental health of patients has really been affected by this lockdown. So the more you can do to connect with the patient and make it personal, the better. As I say, videos can be done on a budget, talking heads to, like I'm doing now, to the computer, or you can just do it, holding your smartphone. Smartphones have got great cameras now, and again, they're fine for doing interviews in the clinic with other members of staff, and also Zoom recordings. The quality is very good. and they're very easy to download, and then you can upload them on your various platforms for distribution. If you do want to invest in video production, again, shop around. It doesn't have to be expensive, but the nice thing about using a video production company is that you may want to get involved in animation and doing the explainer videos, which I'll come on to in a moment. Platforms to share, obviously, as I said, social media is great. Also having your own YouTube channel and doing a lot of marketing to drive subscribers to your YouTube channel, so to actually get them to subscribe and watch your regular videos as they come up, and also sharing that video content with other platforms such as the Fertility Hub, where obviously we've got a large audience of infertility patients that you may not be connected to. So the final slide in this section just looks at demonstrator videos, which, we always have to remember, every patient that you're successful with, another one is just finding out they've got infertility. Infertility is a whole new world to them. So doing demonstrator videos, which can either be animated or actually videoing procedures. We did a great seminar last week with San Diego Fertility, and what was really interesting, I've been in this industry for 16 years, but I'd never actually watched a live egg retrieval and also the insemination process. So Dr. Park from San Diego did a fantastic presentation where she actually had, recorded one of her egg retrievals and actually explained it all, which was just brilliant. And again, like I say, they can be live, or you could do an animation of that, depending on how much you want to spend. Also, don't be afraid to go live. Because everybody who follows you on social media gets a notification. And also technology has really moved on that you're not necessarily going live on just that one platform. You could host your meeting or interview in Zoom and then share that as a live stream on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. So don't be afraid to do it. And also it makes your content far more original rather than the polished, edited version. Video content is basically flexible and affordable. So as I say, you can do it on a budget, you can invest a little bit of money on it, but there are some great free resources out there with the option to go live. And we know from that research, it's where the patients are focused during this current crisis. So on to the next section of my presentation, which is the use of podcasts. They are the perfect platform for a captive audience. So whether your podcast is 15 minutes to half an hour long, I wouldn't advise going any longer than half an hour, but we'll come on to the timings in a minute. It's perfect just to go for a run and listen to it. What we saw was podcasts over the last 2 or 3 years have really been making a very steady growth pre the COVID pandemic. And they were traditionally downloaded in the mornings when people are on their commute to work. So they might catch what they can on the way to work and catch the rest of it on the way home. Since COVID, we've seen the research is showing that they're being downloaded at all hours of the day. It's great because, say, it's a captive audience, you can deliver information in a bite-sized format, and they're quite personal as well. So when you want to plan a podcast, you want to plan it as a series, because it's not just a one-off standalone. It needs to be a structured series, so people know when your episodes are going to come out, they know when to check back for downloads, and research also shows that listeners will download all of your episodes. So content that you might have put out 6 months ago is now getting new listeners. So publish your podcast across all platforms. And there are many out there, but get it on as many platforms, because people, like with social media, they have a particular favourite. So invest time in your podcast. It can take 2 to 3 weeks for a podcast to appear across all streaming platforms. So factor that in if you specifically have a launch date in mind of when you want that to be in the public domain. And then you need to have the same host that people get familiar with. Obviously, if you choose somebody nobody likes, then people won't come back to download anymore. So try and find somebody who's friendly and empathetic to the subject matter of infertility, and then they can host, introduce, explain, and introduce the guest speakers. Also interject with other information. Also, you know, broadcast what's coming up in the future episodes. Naming the podcast. Infertility patients are great at starting their own campaigns and their own movements. So see what's trending, what's hashtagging, and what patients are following at the moment, and choose a name based on that. As I say, the great thing is you could do content, you've got ongoing engagement with this, so you could have done content 6 months ago, and you know, you could pick up new listeners all the time because of the many platforms you're on and the subject matter that they're interested in. And these are all potentially new patients at any time. Also, what podcasts do is it gains trust in your brand. And podcasts are very personal. So again, you know, they're very easy to record, and they're educational. They're personal and they're educational. So this is not a direct sales tool. We just launched our own podcast here at the Fertility Hub, which is called Inside Her Information. And what you want to do is use a striking artwork that makes patients push play. So this particular artwork that we've gone through not only shows sort of the scar of the many operations, but also fear, hope, anxiety, all of the feelings that a patient endures when going through their infertility journey. So in your podcast, you also want to use music. There are many sites out there. Again, you can do this quite cost effectively. There's many sites that use royalty-free music, which you can download, or a nominal fee to use it. And, you know, just think of this sort of like a news, the intro to the news, the head of the news, you know, you get that very distinctive music. And again, you only need that to be like 10, 15 seconds on the intro and again on the outro. Recording your podcast, it's very simple to do depending on the computer technology you use. I personally just use a Zoom recording for the actual conversation, and then I'm a Mac-based person, so then I just use GarageBand to compile it all with the music and the conversation, and it's easy to just chop out segments. You know, if somebody wanted, I didn't mean to say that, could you chop that out? Then again, the length of each episode, I would say about half an hour is quite a good length. You just want, if it's too long, people they see the length and go, oh, I'll have to do that later, I haven't got time now. But something that's anything between 15 to 30 minutes is a good length of time that people can have that on while they're doing the dishes, or like I say, out walking the dog, or running, going for a run. And also use a podcast hosting service, because every time you upload a new podcast, they will then distribute it for you to all the different networking platforms, you know, that stream it. There's also great SEO benefits to producing a podcast, because you're now putting your name out there on the likes of the App Store and Google, in iTunes. You've got Alexa, which is for Amazon. You've got Google Play. So all of those are well worth putting your podcast on, and obviously reaching a bigger audience that again you can drive back to your own website. So it's going to help. And also you have the option of having the podcast on your own website as well. So again, that drives people to it. Okay, moving on to the next section, I'm going to talk about cost-effective marketing. And what we want to do here is saving money on your marketing spend without impacting your inquiries. Now, you know, we've been through the clinics closing down and revenue lost, and now less revenue with having fewer patients in to observe social distancing and keeping COVID secure. So I fully appreciate cuts have to be made to the marketing budget. So what I'm trying to do here is just sort of looking at some marketing methods that keeps your name out there, but doesn't require a huge amount of spend. So first of all, marketing takes centre stage in a crisis. They are handling the messaging that you are putting out. They're handling the messaging of how you're handling the current crisis, and they're going to be in charge of the communications. So if you haven't got one already, I really recommend you have a dedicated member of staff that handles all aspects of marketing. Their role is also to work and bring the patients together with the management team. And that's really important to have that in-between person connecting those two elements of what management goals are and what patient expectations are, and marketing nicely marries those two together. Social media, obviously a free resource, and remember to use all platforms because people have a preference. So if you want to reach all potential patients, you need to be using all of those platforms. You do have to spend money on social media in order to gain your audience, but once you've built it up, which hopefully you've been doing over the last few years, throughout this time, you also, you can get more for your marketing budget at the moment because social media platforms use an auction system, but it's also, keeping up the momentum and doing things like going live because you drop in people's notifications. So always make sure you do content daily on social media. Public relations also, very few clinics do regular press releases. I mean, here at the Fertility Hub, it's free of charge to send in your press release. It goes to our editor, he'll look at it and obviously write it in our own house style. But very few clinics actually release their news, nor are they piggybacking news that's coming out, which obviously COVID has created a lot of news. And you as clinics need to make yourself the expert here. And especially with mainstream news stories, that you comment on that as an expert. You contact the journalist who wrote the story. There might be a follow-up piece on your opinion on the piece that they wrote. So, there's been lots around. We've just had the ESHRE conference, as I say, the report on patients' mental health with the clinics all being closed down was very interesting. And, what is your clinic doing to address those mental health issues? Do you have a mental health program? The counselling you may be offering. We know that infertility is stressful and patients are very anxious anyway. So, this is the time to piggyback those news stories and get free publicity. As I said, SEO, taking time out now and going through every single page on your site and checking how it's ranking and addressing those issues is huge, because you could be spending all this money on Google Ads, but your site is never going to rank organically. Your content is static, you're not updating it regularly enough. And again, this is all the sort of thing that having a dedicated marketing person would do. Also, as I say, our market's ever replenishing, so repurpose content. You can now edit it and make it shorter. I think something like online seminars to repurpose content. The audience is ever replenishing, and you can just refresh that with an intro, and then you can edit out so the presentation isn't as long. People don't have the attention span that they had pre-COVID. So with everything going on, whether that be, work issues, worrying about how their own company is going to survive this crisis, people can't take too much on board. This subject is very close to their heart, so they will give it dedicated time, but just not too long. So not an hour-long seminar. The patient seminars we're putting out, so I'm aiming for half an hour maximum to ask people to sit through presentations. Get registration for anybody you're trying to get to come along to your online seminars, and also use that as an option to opt into your newsletter as well. Again, a very cost-effective method of communication with patients is your newsletter, and never underestimate the power of them. And they are free. You have a database of all these patient inquiries, hopefully, that you've ever taken. You've always recorded their details and got them to opt into your newsletter. Again, as we've just discussed, video content is very cost effective. It's easy to do. It can be free of charge if you do it all in-house. And again, just have your only investment is the time of your marketing department. And as we just discussed as well, podcasting is another free resource. But people take their information in different ways. So the more you're doing, you need to cover all of these options. And as I say, most of them are free of charge. So not putting a dent in the already cut marketing budget. Sorry, just lost my presentation there. So moving on to the last slide, which is, there we go. So sorry, the last section, which is digital marketing. And in my opinion, that is the most important element of all of your marketing tools to get right. It's too expensive. There is no room for error to get this wrong. So let's just recap where we've come from and what we're going through. So middle of March, ASRM, and then closely followed by ESHRE and then the HFEA, advised all fertility clinics to suspend current treatments. So that left huge turmoil and disappointment, anger and frustration amongst the patients. What some clinics did was they decided to freeze all marketing during the lockdown phase, which not only left patients feeling like they weren't very supported and the communication just dried up, but clinics saved money in that period, but they lost out on a 70% increase in web traffic. The bold clinics increased advertising activity and they benefited from those new patient inquiries and really played the long game of keeping patients engaged throughout the lockdown period when they were most active. So to make the most of your digital marketing at the moment, you've got to constantly monitor the changing landscape that is literally, changing from beneath us. And changing before our very eyes. As the lockdown starts to ease, obviously more and more restrictions are lifted, but then some can be clawed back again. So I call this like the mixed phase because there's more local lockdowns, and you have to ask yourself, where are you marketing to? Which countries are you marketing to? And monitor that change by setting up an event in Google Analytics to monitor any government announcements in the countries that you're interested of getting patients from. And now is the time to redefine your business objectives. During lockdown, we didn't know how long it was going to go on for. There wasn't much point in doing a business plan when you didn't know when you were going to reopen. Then from reopening, it's been really hectic, getting COVID secure and rescheduling all of the patients. So now we're a couple of months in from clinics reopening. So now's a good time to define those objectives and monitor them every 2 to 3 weeks to see if you're actually meeting those objectives of what is and what isn't working. And then this is my last slide, which is about putting your net in the right pond. So as I've said, some countries are able to travel again. Some countries, your country, you may be allowing visitors in. Maybe you won't be doing it until September. So what's really important is not to be wasting your marketing money here. What I see, I'm in London, and I see the search term of IVF, is when I put that in, I'm getting offered 5 clinics in countries I can't travel to. So I'm not saying don't advertise in countries that can't travel to you at the moment, but a search term that's premium like IVF is a waste of money. You're not going to see a return on investment of that straight away. So I would look at some of the lower search terms to just keep your presence of mind. Also remember that your global market has become a local one. So with 1 in 8 suffering with infertility, 1 in 8 in your town and in your region is. So use your fishing net in your local pond at the moment. Also make sure you're getting added value. Look around and again, look at those search terms. Also, things like Facebook and Google are using an auction system. So with so many companies now freezing marketing altogether, you're going to get a lot more for your money in those mainstream media of targeting patients in that age demographic. Also, we saw a lot of people who weren't usual online users offline. They were offline and would contact you more in traditional methods via the telephone or via email, were forced to get online during lockdown. And now is the time to hook those in and keep them in your net by getting them signed up to your newsletter, get them to engage with your social media channels, get them to engage with your video content, with your podcast, all of these things. There's a whole new market of people who weren't using the internet before who are now. So just get them in your net. And as I say, do a constant review every 2 to 3 weeks. What's working, what's not. If it's not working, stop it, because you cannot afford to waste any money at this present time, especially from the sacred marketing budget. Finally, just the use of new platforms. So what's been really up and coming throughout the lockdown has been TikTok, which in your mind you might just think is for the kids to dance along. But in actual fact, the user age has gone up. So it's between 30 to 40. And a lot of companies here in the UK, because they can't get out and film at the moment and do their adverts like they normally would, new campaigns, what they're doing is repurposing their original adverts with members of their team or getting members of the public to reenact their adverts on TikTok, which they're actually quite funny, and they're getting quite good coverage here in the UK. So again, it's things to think of. Maybe you could do something with your team doing a TikTok video. They get really good social engagement, and again, IVF's very personal, so it's just a fun thing to do with your team to show that you are human. As I said in my last presentation, WhatsApp now has a status sharing. It's a great way to collect an audience via messaging with WhatsApp. And as I suggested before, if you get a dedicated number for WhatsApp for the clinic itself, and then you can do status updates on that. So it's only going out to your patients. And as I say, it's coming down the tracks that they're going to be moving that to a more social media platform. So they'll operate a bit like Facebook with Messenger separately, and then there'll be WhatsApp to message and WhatsApp as a platform. And then the final one is Snapchat. Again, ages coming up on that, between 30 to 40, very popular in that demographic of people that you want to reach who are possibly going through issues in trying to conceive. Okay, my final slide. I've spoken about this in all the presentations just because I'm really happy with it. I spoke to a lot of companies during lockdown who were offering COVID testing and being quoted extortionate amounts of money, and also for very little reliability. So I was very happy with this test. There's a minimum buy-in, as in the amount you have to order, which was compared to thousands with other companies. So I was quite happy with that. Very simple finger prick test that you do in the clinic, and you get the results within 10 to 15 minutes. It's a revenue stream to both offer patients and public in your area because it's healthcare use only, so you can be offering COVID testing. A lot of people want to know if they've had it. It's up to you as physicians to tell them what they do with that knowledge and how you advise them going forward with treatment. But it's available and you can find it on the Fertility Hub. One other thing is just don't overcharge. There's been quite a lot of bad press for clinics doing COVID testing and charging patients an extra £500, especially when they were tests they could have gotten the NHS for free. So yes, in terms of the antibody testing, if you are going to use it, then please don't overcharge. Details of that can be found on the Fertility Hub, and use the link to get the discount that we've negotiated on your behalf. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for attending today and for listening. If you've written any questions in the live chat as we've gone along, I'll answer those now. When I end the broadcast, the live chat does end, but I will stay online for 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can put them in comments, or if you're not comfortable doing that, or you need to leave, then just please make a note of my email address. It's veronica@thefertilityhub.com. I love speaking to all different clinics from all different countries, because that really helps me in getting a handle on what's going on and helps me to write these blogs and do these presentations. So once again, thanks very much for coming along. Please stay safe, everybody, and I'll see you next month for the last seminar, which will be on the 8th of September at 5 p.m. But I'll be in touch with a link for it to join. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.